It's an immutable law of the internet. If you ask a question enough times, eventually someone is going to suggest, what if you just fake your own death? It's a perennial question on Reddit. What if you could just vanish? What if there was this one weird trick to wipe your slate clean? Biden couldn't do student loan forgiveness, but you don't need forgiveness if you're already dead. You can leave behind the bills, the deadlines, the ex, the taxes, walk away from your life, fake your death. It sounds like the plot twist of a daytime soap opera, and it often is. Stefano Demera did it 13 times.
Oh, wait, look at that.
It's him.
Son of a bitch is still alive.
And somehow the citizens of Salem are still completely shocked every time. But for a surprising number of people, faking their death is a very real plan. One Redditor pitched the detailed plan involving pills, a lake, and a disguise. Meanwhile, a Redditor watching Dexter New Blood, for some reason, asked the quote, "Is faking your death illegal, or is it what happens afterward, like faking your identity?" Great question. The answer? It's complicated. Just ask Nashville attorney William Groth, a lawyer, a man trained in the finer points of evidence. Groth left his Honda Civic at a boat ramp in 2023, tossed his wallet and jacket into a river like it was CSI midlife crisis, and vanished. Police launched a full-scale search, divers, dogs, helicopters, emergency responders. But the thing is, Groth wasn't dead. He was hiding in a motel in Montana. 5 days later, he called the cops pretending to be his own killer. Voice analysis revealed the killer was Groth himself. He later checked into a psychiatric facility, which may have been the first smart legal move that he had made in quite some time. So here's the big question. Faking your own death is actually illegal, right? Okay, let's start by answering the most common Reddit question about faking your own death. Is it illegal? The concept of pretending to be dead is called pseudocide. It comes from the Greek pseudo, meaning false, and cider, meaning refreshing beverage made from apples. No, I'm just kidding. Side, meaning to kill. It literally means false killing. There are no statutes actually banning pseudocide, but law enforcement uses the term when a person disappears under mysterious circumstances. Obviously, there's no body, and the death allowed the person to probably escape something they wanted to avoid, like debt, prosecution, or an annoying spouse. Now, there's no blanket federal law either that says thou shalt not fake thy death, which means that faking your own death is a legal gray area. In fact, if you just walked into the woods and never came back, that's probably legal. But of course, that's not faking your death. That's just disappearing without telling anyone where you are. But things get legally spicy real fast if your death includes any of the following: a forged death certificate, a false police report, a staged accident that triggers a search and rescue, or collecting money based on your demise. Now, you might think that you can Dexter your way into a new life, but unless you're a fictional serial killer with TV writers on your side, reality will probably catch up to you. And the moment someone else spends money, files legal documents, or makes a decision based on your alleged death, you're not just pretending anymore. You're probably committing fraud. Now, the legal system is based on trust and documentation. So once you lie to it, everything else unravels. So as that astute Redditor pointed out, it's generally not the death that's the crime, it's the paperwork. Or it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. But sometimes it's the crime itself. Now, our first paperwork crime is fraud. People who fake their own deaths often do it to collect life insurance payouts, dodge creditors, or trick financial institutions. Filing a false insurance claim is insurance fraud. And using your fake death to escape debts can trigger federal wire fraud or mail fraud charges. In both state and federal courts, fraud may include a prison term depending on the amount of money involved. For instance, William Groth eventually pleaded guilty to attempting to defraud his life insurance company and was given 5 years of probation. But what if he just didn't fake his death for long enough? What about the statute of limitations on these crimes? Well, most federal crimes have a 5-year statute of limitations. But the thing is, in most cases, the clock pauses if the person is deliberately evading justice. So if someone vanishes to avoid prosecution or defraud others, the statute of limitations tolls until they are found. And if someone committed serious crimes like murder, there is no statute of limitations. Now, given everything that's happening in Washington, I feel like I might need to fake my own death sometime soon. Because as you might have noticed, we're producing way more content than ever before. And the insanity of the news cycle makes it increasingly difficult to produce content like this that's not related to the news here on YouTube. That's why we're doubling down on producing even more original content and exclusives on our homegrown streaming platform, Nebula, the sponsor of this video. We just made a Nebula exclusive video about the unbelievable criminal self-destruction of DC's former Golden Boy Supreme Court attorney Tom Goldstein. It's a story of greed, gambling, porn stars, and tax evasion that we've been working on for the past few months. Or you could check out the full-length version of my recent collaboration with Dr. Mike reacting to The Good Doctor that contains an additional 20 minutes of legal analysis that had to be cut from the YouTube version. Or you can check out our exclusive video on how RFK Jr. can and cannot legally ban vaccines, or our exclusive video about unhinged judges that went too far, just to name a few. In fact, every video we've uploaded to Nebula this year is an extended cut, featuring additional analysis and commentary at the end. You can watch all our videos on Nebula ad-free and early because I and hundreds of your other favorite YouTube creators always upload to Nebula first. So if you want to support this channel and its mission to demystify the legal miasma that we live in, one way to do so is signing up for Nebula. In fact, people often ask if it helps the channel more to watch on YouTube or Nebula. The answer is emphatically Nebula. The watch time payouts are bigger, and since my creator friends and I created Nebula ourselves, we don't have to worry about capricious demonetization standards, which has been a huge problem this year. So if you'd like to sign up, you can get 40% off your annual subscription, a year of the best content for just $36, or you can even gift that to a friend with a Nebula gift card. Or you can check out the lifetime subscription, where for $300 you can get access to Nebula forever. Either way, you can click on the link below, or I'll see you in court. Now, another common charge is filing a false police report. If someone reports you missing or dead, and you knowingly cause or participate in that false information reaching law enforcement or emergency services, you can be charged for that as well. And so can your accomplices, if you had any. That's what happened to a British man named John Darwin and his wife Anne. They staged his disappearance in a canoe accident so that Anne could collect the £250,000 insurance policy in life insurance and pension payouts. But that was just the beginning of the aptly named Darwin's wild tale. Now, shortly after he died, John moved into the house next door to his wife, which the couple also owned. And John hid in that house for 4 years. But the couple were eventually brought down by a photo of them enjoying a vacation in Panama. John tried to pull the soap opera trick of claiming to have amnesia, while Anne feigned to be shocked that he was alive. That did not work. John was sentenced to 6 years in prison for fraud, and Anne went to prison because she was his accomplice. She also had to cough up $500,000. And identity theft is another frequent paper crime. To stay dead, many people use fake names, stolen social security numbers, extra passports, and forged documents to rent apartments, open bank accounts, and get new jobs. And depending on the method and scope, assuming a false identity can be charged federally or at the state level. And each false act, like signing a lease under a false name, can count as a separate offense. And if the person who fakes their death has dependents, it's highly likely they'll wind up owing a lot of money when they get caught. Which brings me to Richard Hoagland, who parked his car in the Annapolis airport in 1993 and disappeared. A few months later, Hoagland sent his sons a birthday card saying he hoped to see them again. Now, this backfired spectacularly on his wife. Since there was no record of Hoagland ever taking a flight and no dead body, the birthday card raised police suspicion that she actually killed him. That's right, Hoagland's actions made his wife the suspect in his fake death. And she lost everything, 2 cars, the family home, and years of her life, while police turned her life upside down to figure out if she was a murderer. Now, after 10 years, the law considered Hoagland legally dead. But in 2016, Florida police arrested him for presenting a fake ID. As it turns out, Hoagland started a new family using a dead man's name to get a new birth certificate and driver's license. A relative discovered the identity fraud while doing research on his family history. So it might be that Ancestry.com catches more identity thieves than detectives. But the moral of the story is that if you dump your wife and children in a dramatic fashion, the law will eventually catch up to you. An Indiana judge ordered Hoagland to pay $2 million in back child support, including $1.4 million in interest. In addition, the Fed sentenced him to 2 years in federal prison for aggravated identity theft. And since Hoagland also made misrepresentations in connection with the Section 8 housing program, the court ordered him to forfeit $42,500. Additionally, faking your own death almost always leads to obstruction of justice charges. Obstruction of justice broadly refers to actions by individuals that illegally prevent or influence the outcome of a government proceeding. For reasons that I'm not going to inquire about, this is another issue that Reddit is often curious about. One in particular, quote, "If a will has been executed or a property disturbed, what happens to the property?" Well, if authorities can show you intentionally disrupted the government process, such as a probate proceeding, then obstruction of justice charges are likely to follow. And generally, if someone fakes their death and then makes a dramatic return, they probably can't get their assets back. The law views the property as having passed in good faith to the heirs, and in most jurisdictions, the dead person won't get their assets back unless there was some fraud on the court that they didn't participate in, like someone forging a will. But forging a death certificate or altering official paperwork is a separate felony in almost every jurisdiction. A man named Robert Berger thought that he could fake his death to avoid a prison sentence by forging a death certificate. His fiancée told Berger's lawyer that he committed suicide. The lawyer sent the death certificate to court officials. The prosecutor assigned to the case compared the certificate to legitimate ones online, and then it all unraveled. Missing watermarks, different fonts and type sizes, and even a misspelling. And you can see here that the death certificate, which supposedly came from the New Jersey Department of Health, Vital Statistics, and Registry, had it rendered as Registry. Berger was facing charges on attempting to steal a vehicle and possessing a stolen vehicle. New York prosecutors added misdemeanor charges for falsifying death certificate and forging a signature. And because Berger ran to Pennsylvania using a stolen car and fake identity, he will also be serving prison time in Pennsylvania after he completes his sentence in New York. But the sickos on Reddit were also curious about bigamy charges. Bigamy is the crime of marrying someone else while you're still married to another person. It is illegal in all 50 states. And the answer is yes, death fakers can be convicted for remarrying. They can even be court-martialed for it. For example, James Powell, an Air Force parachute commando, was married with 2 children when he decided to stage his own death in 1987. Powell was successful. The authorities concluded he was swept down the Rio Grande River near Albuquerque after a bicycle accident. But Powell was very much alive. He moved to San Diego, took the name Christopher Riggs, married again, and had 2 children. For 5 years, Powell continued to live a double life, but eventually he robbed a bank while dressed in Ninja Warrior garb. His second wife had known about her husband's past, but when she discovered that Powell had impregnated the neighbor, that was the last straw. She turned him in for all of it. The military court-martialed Powell and convicted him of bigamy and desertion. Though things seemed to be on the up for Powell when 2 production companies bought the rights to his life story shortly after he was sent to the brig, paying him about $500,000. But Powell wasn't done writing his story. He escaped from the stockade at the March Air Force Base and went on the lam for several months. And his escape turned his original 11-month sentence into a 5-year sentence for robbery and escape from confinement. Though Powell's story eventually made it to the small screen with the TV movie Lies He Told, starring Gary Cole, though honestly, I would not recommend it. Though that still doesn't necessarily mean that Powell made money from selling his story. Son of Sam laws are statutes that prevent criminals from profiting off the publicity of their crimes by selling book, movie, or media rights. Named after the serial killer David Berkowitz, the so-called Son of Sam, who was offered money for his story. These laws were originally enacted to seize such profits and redirect them to victims or their families. However, the US Supreme Court struck down New York's original Son of Sam law, ruling that it violated the First Amendment by targeting speech based on its content. Some states have since revisited their versions to comply with constitutional standards. For example, New York's revised law enlarged the statute of limitations so that victims could sue the perpetrator for damages if they sell their story. But these laws are still controversial and not uniformly enforced. So it is possible that Powell made his crime spree pay. Combined, these charges turn what started as a desperate escape plan into a mountain of legal problems that no fake identity can outrun. But the next fake death enthusiast made such a mess of things that he never even got to the fake identity part, since his face made international news. In August of 2024, a 45-year-old Ryan Bogwart, a married father of 3, made worldwide headlines after he disappeared while kayaking off the coast of Green Lake in Wisconsin. According to the eventual police report, Ryan threw his cell phone, fishing pole, and tackle box that contained his identifying documents into the lake. But at the time, authorities didn't know this, so they launched a massive search and rescue mission that lasted 54 days, quote, involving underwater drones, towable submersible sonar, divers, and 3 canine cadaver teams failed to retrieve his body. The search cost at least $35,000. But the police eventually discovered that, quote, Ryan got on an e-bike that he had brought with him and stashed on shore, rode it to a Greyhound bus stop, and took that bus to the Toronto airport in Canada. From there, Ryan flew to Europe and went to Eastern Europe, Western Asia, where he took up residency. So why did Ryan undergo this planes, trains, kayaks, and automobiles journey? Because he fell for an Uzbekistan woman. And as one Redditor points out, quote, TLC should hit this guy up for one of the 90 Day Fiancé shows. But it turns out that Ryan's perfect plan flopped harder than Big Ed on 90 Days Happily Ever After. Canadian Border Patrol thought Ryan was suspicious when he crossed the border because he had 2 passports and no driver's license. So they let him into the country, but they recorded his border crossing, which alerted Wisconsin police. Local cops then went through his laptop, which he left at home to make his disappearance more convincing. And the laptop contained plenty of damning evidence. Ryan had replaced the hard drive on his laptop and then cleared the browser history on the day he disappeared. He acquired a second passport. He sent inquiries about moving his money to foreign banks. He changed all the email addresses associated with his bank accounts on the day he planned to go on the lam. He used a gift card to buy a plane ticket. Instead of making it more convincing, the laptop led police straight to Ryan's Eastern European doorstep. So all you aspiring pseudo-siders out there, take notes about all the things that Ryan did wrong, and then burn them. So when Ryan was in Uzbekistan, he was safe because the country does not have an extradition treaty with the US. But once Bogwart crossed into the country of Georgia, which does extradite to the US, Ryan's plan collapsed. The police basically told him to come back to the US. So Ryan sent the police this proof of life video and hightailed it back to the USA.
Good evening, it's Ryan Bogwart. Today, hello mate. Today is November 11th. It's approximately 10 a.m. by you guys. I'm in my apartment. I am safe, secure, no problem. Hope this works.
So the $35,000 question is, did Ryan Bogwart commit a crime? Yes, but seemingly only a minor one. Prosecutors charged him with one misdemeanor count of obstruction of a law enforcement officer, which is found in section 946.41 of the Wisconsin statutes. Bogwart pretty clearly gave false information to officers and placed physical evidence with the intent to mislead them. And the criminal complaint says he took the following actions to mislead officers. Quote, he intentionally placed his kayak, tackle box, and fishing pole and left his cell phone in the lake to make law enforcement and everyone else believe that he had drowned in Green Lake. Ryan knew that law enforcement from Green Lake would respond and begin a search for him. Ryan also knew that placing these items in Green Lake, along with leaving his vehicle here and his method of leaving Green Lake County, would again leave us to believe that he drowned in the lake and that we would be searching for him in the lake. Ryan's intent was to mislead the Greene County Sheriff's Office. But this wasn't a felony in Wisconsin. A Class A misdemeanor is punishable by 9 months in jail, a $10,000 fine, or both. And prosecutors asked the court to seize Bogwart's passport because he was obviously inclined to run, but the judge said he wasn't a flight risk since he returned to the country on his own volition. Now, it seems prosecutors considered charging him with other crimes, but they thought they might not be able to prove them. For example, Bogwart took out a $375,000 insurance policy 7 months before his disappearance. However, Bogwart's immediate family, the beneficiaries, never filed a claim. So the most prosecutors could probably charge him with was possibly attempted fraud, but it was no sure thing. So as it stands, Bogwart is charged with a single count. So now after going all of this, it seems that the Redditors realize what trouble they're in if they have indeed faked their own death and have expressed some contrition. And some asked, how do you reestablish your identity after you've faked your own death? Well, as it turns out, getting legally resurrected is harder than you think. It's not as easy as walking into a courtroom and saying, surprise, I'm not actually dead. You not only have to contend with law enforcement and angry relatives, you also get to complete a mountain of paperwork. It's kind of like Tom Hanks in Castaway. Surviving 4 years on a desert island was hard, but getting through the DMV, that's even harder. And as a bonus, there's no guarantee that courts will accept that you're still alive. That's right, sometimes when a court declares you legally dead, you have to stay that way. An Ohio man learned this the hard way. Donald Miller Jr. disappeared in 1986. His ex-wife Robin filed paperwork to declare Miller legally dead in 1994, which enabled her to collect Social Security benefits for their 2 children. But Miller resurfaced nearly 20 years later when he and his girlfriend showed up in Robin's yard. Although Robin tried to be civil with her legally dead first husband, things got complicated when he petitioned the court to reverse the death ruling. Robin Miller opposed her husband's request because if the law brought him back to life, she would have to suffer for his sins. And the Social Security Administration opened a fraud case against Robin that could have forced her to pay back almost $30,000 in benefits. But the law wasn't on Donald's side. Under Ohio law, there's a 3-year limit to challenge a death declaration, and his return came well outside of that window. As a result, the probate judge presiding over Miller's case ruled that he had to remain legally dead. Despite acknowledging the bizarre circumstances, the judge said that his hands were tied by these strict legal deadlines. And the Social Security Administration eventually decided not to pursue the case against Robin. And as for Miller, he found himself in a catch-22 of his own making. Being officially dead made it difficult to obtain basic documents like a driver's license or Social Security card, and once the judge ruled against him, his options were even more limited. He could have appealed the decision and challenged the statute of limitations as unconstitutional, but both of those options would have cost a ton of money, and according to his lawyer, Miller couldn't afford it. And reports say that Miller petitioned the Social Security Administration for a new Social Security number, but there's no reports about whether he actually got it or not. So it seems the law made him a legal zombie. Without legal recognition, he essentially became invisible to government systems, which might have been his goal all along. But if you decide to fake your own death, you're probably gonna want a good lawyer. Luckily, I know a guy. Now, all this highlights why it's so important to get a great lawyer when you're dealing with your own case. Now, after I started this channel, every week I'd get hundreds of comments and emails from viewers who are dealing with legal problems. And they'd ask, can you help me find a lawyer? How do I know if this attorney is any good? And there's a massive gap in our justice system. It's that people don't know how to find the right lawyer for their specific situation. They're scared, they're overwhelmed, and they end up doing nothing or hiring the first attorney who calls them back. And that really bothered me. So I started to wonder, what if there was a different way? What if we could build a law firm that actually lived up to the values that I talk about on this channel: transparency, accessibility, and putting clients first instead of chasing billable hours. A firm where you don't need to pay anything up front and your lawyers only get paid if you do, to maximize your opportunity for justice. So a few years ago, I decided to fix that problem. I decided to start my own personal injury law firm. And honestly, it wasn't an easy choice. But I realized I was in this unique position. I had this platform, this community, and the experience. Not to get rich, trust me, there are easier ways to make money than starting a law practice. But we did it because access to justice shouldn't be a luxury. Because because finding the right legal representation shouldn't feel like playing Russian roulette with your future. And when you work with my firm, you're not just getting a lawyer. You're getting a team that understands that behind every case is a real person with real stakes. If we can't represent you or you're in a state where we don't practice, we'll take the time to try to match you with an attorney in my personal network of lawyers. A national network of some of the best lawyers in the country who actually specialize in what you're going through, located right where you are, not just whoever happens to be available. So if you're dealing with a personal injury, a car crash, a data breach, sexual harassment, a social security or workers' comp issue, give us a call at the number on screen or click on the link below. Now, I can't represent everyone that watches this channel. I wish I could, but what I can do is make sure that when you need legal help, you have somewhere to turn to that you can trust. So whether it's me handling your case or the incredible attorneys we partnered with, you'll get the same principles of honesty and education that we bring to every video. And if you're dealing with a legal issue and you're not sure where to start, check out the link in the description. Let's have a conversation about how we can help you find not just a lawyer, but the right lawyer for your situation. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, making sure that when life gets complicated, you don't have to face it alone. Which is why when you need a lawyer, you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle team.